This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
Hi, this is Joe. Going to give you a stock market update today. Going through the S&P. I'm going to go through all the market conditions, including sentiment. We're going to look at the overbought, oversold condition. We're also going to look at the condition of volatility in both daily and weekly. And then we're going to go in multiple time frames through the spider, looking at monthly, weekly, daily, and hourly. All right, let's go ahead and get going through this. Just quickly, if you have an interest in learning more about my approach, I would suggest starting with the book, which I am offering at a discount right now. Go to rabilstockresearch.com/book to find out some more information on that. Okay, so anyone new to this channel, what I do is on this chart, I'm going to cover these bottom three, and then I'm going to switch over to the 4 time frames and go through in depth the monthly, weekly, and daily for both trend and momentum after I get through this first part. So we're going to start with the sentiment down at the bottom. It didn't shift very much. It went from 35 to 34. And I know the range is more like 35 to 45. Right. But I think I'm just going to, because it was at 35 last week, I'm going to leave it in the negative camp. Somewhere in this range here where we're oscillating, in the mid 30s to mid 40s, it's more of a negative reading where we're starting to get into a danger zone. Now, what I mentioned last week is that I don't use this as a timing tool. It's a condition. It's a market condition, and we want to be aware of. And the backdrop here is starting to get to, it's in the edge of being a little bit uncomfortable. Now, because of the time of the year, and I've been saying this, I don't think, anything is possible. All right. I adhere by that. I agree that anything can happen. But just generally speaking, and I went through the yearly bar chart last week, and I sort of explained that I think if they were going to get this going to the downside to any significant degree, they would have done it here, breaking this key support and finished off the year with a big tail, with a big topping tail, or even, giving back even more and closed near the low of the year or something like that. But the fact that it turned and now it's up near the highs and we're down, we've got about 3 weeks left to the year. I just think odds are it wants to maybe finish up near its highs. Now, we got to watch this day to day. So far, it's adhering to what I've been thinking. We've been more sideways rather than down. But we're still got these two conditions negative. All right. Now, what I'm thinking is that, and the reason why I went into this end of the year type of thing is that I just think this could be pushed off into the new year. This could be negative. These could stay this way, and this could just linger in this kind of overbought condition with more and more people getting bullish into the end of the year. And then as we flip over the calendar into 2024, then we might be on the lookout for some signs of a reversal. Now, like I said, it's possible that December could be a bad month, and it just turns down and shows some weakness. But we just haven't shown any real distribution overall in the general market indices so far. Now, the other reason why I'm leaning more towards this being kind of a push to the upside is look at the the average true range and the volatility. The volatility is dropping on both the daily and the weekly. The weekly is back to hitting a new low. This line is declining. This is clearly declining. This 18 MA of the average true range is falling. So whenever we have falling volatility in a specific time frame, that is positive. It's a sign of less risk. And so that's actually on the positive side. And the same thing holds true and really has been true this entire year. Is we haven't had a lot of volatility on the weekly chart. So the underlying trend condition has been pretty good based on the volatility for the weekly. I did make a switch on the weekly trend and momentum. Both of them flipped from neutral to positive. So we're going to go ahead and get into that now. So let's just start out. And again, there's certain things that are taking place that just have me thinking that, there's just somewhat of an upward bias. If we look at this monthly, we're operating on a pinch play right now. All right. And we had a big green bar last week. Now, what I mentioned last week is the possibility of a little congestion, a little minor pullback or whatever to start the month, and even into the first couple weeks of the month potentially. But then I would expect this to maybe close near its highs, or potentially it could be strong. If it gets too strong too early, then it's possible it could kind of finish off the year and after as a failure to a new high. So we got to be on the lookout for that as well. But what I'm telling you is just when I look at this and I go through it, I can't call this momentum positive. I have it neutral. This is positive, turning at the zero line with a pinch play, but this isn't that much strength. We haven't even made a higher high here yet. And I guess if we get enough strength there, that's possible. I could turn that to the upside. We don't have a lot of selling strength, but we just don't show a lot of buying strength yet. So I think this big green bar coming off the moving averages along with the pinch play has me feeling like this underlying bias is to the upside. And then we go to the weekly chart, and I was sort of hoping that we'd maybe get a little bit of a dip a little closer to 450, maybe work off the overbought. And we still could potentially. I know there's more data coming out tomorrow on Friday morning. So by the time you're watching this, there's going to be news coming around 8:30 on employment data and such. So we could get hit a little bit here. Maybe this drops it down, as I said, and fills in a little bit between here and the 18. Maybe even potentially forms a pinch or forms a higher pivot low here. So, but don't be surprised if this just kind of keeps just drifting to the upside into the end of the year. So the conditions are up, the bias is up. Now, when I go and look at what's going on the daily, I was considering whether this should go to neutral when I look at the momentum. I mean, clearly the trend is up. And by the way, just before I go on, the weekly MA, 18 MA is now rising above a rising 40 and prices above both. And, we're basically in a position where it would be hard for me to call this anything but positive. Now, if you look at it from a 1, 2, 3 standpoint, we do still have to recognize that we did break the trend line and we're testing the high. We haven't actually broken out yet. Again, I would feel really good if this came down and made a little dip and formed almost like a little higher low like that. That would be very bullish, I think, and that would kind of probably finish us off on a positive note if it played out that way. But like I said, it might just go ahead and push to the upside and complete the negation of the 1, 2, 3. Right? This is the one. We're forming the 2 now. If we push to a good enough new high, then we have to alter the trend line and start the process all over again. So we're right up against the highs. We're just going to have to see how it reacts. Now, I did want to mention that as I was going through and deciding whether to keep this in the positive camp, we do have some divergence taking place. Got a little bit of momentum loss here, but the fact that the ADX is still rising and the fact that we don't have a single day of abnormal volume selling. There's not one red bar that's higher than the average 50-day moving average of the volume. This going back, 3-4 weeks. I'm just kind of adding that in as sort of a tiebreaker here. Rising ADX, and then the other thing that I think is really key. You see how we don't have any abnormal volume days, no real signs of distribution. Well, look at what the red DI is doing. This is, I tell you, there's a high correlation between volume and DI. And you see what's going on here? You see how this just keeps drifting lower? There are no sellers at all. All right. We've lost some strength in the buyers, but we have no sign of strength. In fact, if this were actually creeping higher while this was doing that, then I probably would have put it to neutral, because we're going to start to see this line turn down if that happens. And if that happens with the MACD doing what it's doing, then yeah, I could say we're going through some kind of a correction phase or something like that. It's hard to say that when there are 0 sellers right now. So I think, we've got to go with what we're seeing here and not with what we believe. It feels overbought, but as I've been telling my subscribers, I sent out a report on Monday. The work I do for overbought, oversold, when I do a bottom-up review and I take all the stocks and start adding them together as to whether they're in short-term uptrends or not, we are not overbought yet based on my indicator. So we've got a little bit more room to push higher. And again, I sort of think a lot of this is leaning me towards thinking into the new year. Now, what I mentioned, just to finish up here, as I mentioned, we were pushing up with a lot of strength, power, positive, and then kind of non-existent. It started to really drift off. We've kind of lost the momentum to the upside. But here's what we haven't done. You notice how red DI hasn't broken out? We haven't gotten red DI to do anything. This is just the same thing. This is even more sensitive than the red DI on the daily. So if we're going to get sellers to show up, they've got to pop here, and we're going to have to break out above this. That could happen in an instant. I mean, it could happen quickly. The only thing you got to be careful of is, let's say it gaps down or it has a big down bar on some economic data and then comes back. Well, we're going to get a big red push, but if it comes back, then we got to recognize that this is the volatility is causing the red DI to break out. So far, the MACD is holding the zero line on this time frame. So it's sort of doing what I mentioned last week. The possibility would be maybe we just oscillate here rather than rolling down. All right. And if that plays out that way, then you have to sort of assume when an overbought market doesn't go down, then you kind of have to look at it like that's probably a higher, we're probably going to push higher. All right. That's the update for the week. Go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.